All right. So here's a tip, guys. So my command pod, right, has our, it can circularize, right? So check this out. What I'm gonna do, we're at 4 by 105. We're gonna touch the ground real quick if we're not careful. But my upper stage we don't need to use the upper stage anymore. And I don't want to leave this thing up in space. That's a bad habit to get into. It's space junk, right? So what I'm gonna do is separate the pod. I'm gonna separate the pod, and now I'm gonna turn on all the pod's RCS here. Make sure the advanced controls are active. No pitch. Hey, come on now. All right, no pitch, no yaw, no roll, and I am going to use the pod's engine here to finish off that circularization. Like that. We were a little bit past AP, right? Trying to get the AP to me right now. And then once the AP is to me, this is not a very efficient way to do this, but we have the Delta V required for this mission. So yeah, what I always do, guys, and real life rockets do this as well. The space shuttle, for instance, did this with its external tank, if you really want to know. The big orange tank, that never made it into space. It made it like 99% of the way there. The shuttle would use smaller engines to get up into space and would drop the external tank so it re-enters, right? But what I'm going to do now with the pod is I'm going to finish off my circularization. So my stage, that stage gets eaten. We want it to re-enter because you don't want to leave that up here. Leaving unguided debris up around Kerbin is a bad habit to get into. One, because it's pretty sure debris in KSP1 clogs the heck out of the save. It'll really eat up your memory real quick for your computer. Two, it's just a good habit to be in. Three, that's what they do in real life. That's realistic. So what I'm doing here is I want to set my AP up at 100. And a good thing to do is if you want to be very precise, I don't know why it keeps highlighting that, fellas. I can't figure that one out. What you want to do to be very precise is use the RCS to fine-tune your orbit. Orbital rendezvous is key. A key to orbital rendezvous, brain didn't do good there. A key to orbital rendezvous is making sure what you're going to and what you're trying to get to said target are both in nice circular orbits with the same inclination. So I'm going to try to get this orbit using the RCS, using my fine control thrusters, right? The reaction control system, basically pulse jets up here that use compressed air or hypergolic systems to do some fine maneuvers. If you noticed, I burned a little bit retrograde and I got my AP right to 100, okay? That's key, okay? Gotta be precise. Now, we have to get into a nice circular orbit, but we also have to make sure, yep, there goes the stage. Stage got eaten by the Kraken here. But we also have to make sure, right, that our PE is at the same value here. So what we'll do, I'll flip on the RCS, roll the capsule, and we'll just roll the capsule around here until we're pointed in the right direction. Yeah, once again, I don't know why the game insists on highlighting that part. Some type of UI. We have to raise our PP to the same value. Wait, what? Sorry. I'm secretly 12. Don't tell anybody, please. So now, we could either A, use the RCS to boost up our orbit, which seems to be doing the job just fine, or we could use the engine. Real life, with a craft like this, you'd probably just use the RCS. That's how, like, Dragon would do it. Dragon is making course correction maneuvers right now as we speak. And now, I'm going to burn radial in just a little bit with the RCS, and then prograde.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
We're at 99.9 by 100. There we go. That's circular enough. We have little over 100-meter difference. That's pretty damn circular. This type of orbit is called an orbit with next to zero eccentricity. Eccentricity is one of the variables for defining an orbit. There's 6 of them. Now, I could go through right angle of ascending node, longitude of ascending node, inclination, eccentricity, semi-major axis, argument of perigee. That's what they are. I could go through all those. You don't need to worry about all those. You need to worry about eccentricity and inclination. That's it. That's all you got to worry about in Kerbal. Just 2 out of the 6. You need the other ones later for doing other things, but the maneuver nodes will basically teach you that. You want to get good at KSP, learn what inclination and eccentricity means. So, we'll define eccentricity here. We are in a almost zero eccentric orbit. The reason we have zero eccentricity is because the orbit is perfectly circular, okay? If we took our maneuver node here, right? We took the maneuver node and we started burning retrograde, or burning prograde, so burning in the direction that we're going, our orbit would become more elliptical. It would be egg-shaped. This has a higher eccentricity than the orbit that we're in. Now, eccentricity works on a scale from 0 to 1. 0 meaning a perfectly circular orbit, and 1 meaning escape velocity. Escape velocity is has orbital eccentricity beyond 1, okay? That eccentricity is over 1 because we're leaving Kerbin's sphere of influence, right? So get out of that. We don't need that. So that's eccentricity. Eccentricity, 0 is a perfect circle, 1 escape velocity. And any elliptical style orbit in between, it has a higher eccentricity, or a higher or up to 1. All right, that's basic for eccentricity. You have to make sure, it is really important, the thing that you're trying to rendezvous to is in a nice circular orbit. It'll make it easier for you, okay? Now, the next thing is inclination, orbital inclination. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set the moon as target. Now, what's orbital inclination and how does that work? The inclination of an orbit is defined by what the angle is that the orbit crosses the equator at. Okay, so what does that mean? Kerbin's equator. Kerbin has an equator. Earth has an equator. The moon has an equator. They all have it. All right. Your orbit, if it follows the equator, like mine does, to 0.1 degree, right? You are in a 0 degree inclined orbit. 0 degrees inclined would be an orbit that follows the equator. Okay. Now, if your orbit was at 45 degrees, if you had a 45 degree inclination, your orbit would be 45 degrees inclined to the equator, meaning the point that you cross the equator, if you draw a path from your orbit and you drew a path to the equator, would be 45 degrees. If it's 90 degrees, that means you're in a polar orbit. Polar orbit goes up and down. It goes this way. It's 90 degrees off of the equator. When you cross the equator, you're crossing it perpendicular. All right? Orbital inclination goes from 0 to 180 degrees. All right. Now, what's past 90? Past 90 is called a retrograde orbit. All right. From 0 to 90 is a prograde orbit. From 90 to 180, that's a retrograde orbit. Now, what's the difference between a retrograde orbit and a prograde orbit? Like, what's the difference here? Well, Kerbin is spinning this way. It's spinning counterclockwise. If we looked at it from the North Pole, she spins counterclockwise. Any orbit with an inclination past 90 is counteracting. It's going against the spin of the planet that you're around. So, that's a retrograde orbit. Retrograde goes against the way the planet is spinning. 91 degrees inclined, retrograde orbit. Okay? 135 degrees inclined, retrograde orbit. 180 degrees inclined, retrograde orbit. That means I'm in an equatorial orbit but going the wrong way. Literally the exact opposite orbit of this. Now, that's just a quick word on inclination. What you guys need to know for doing rendezvous, right, is to get your inclination to 0. We're basically at 0 here. We're 0.1. So I launched the rocket right into a 0 degree inclined orbit. We're 0.1 degrees off. And a good way to check this is to set the moon as target. That's a trick that you can use. The moon's orbit relative to Kerbin is 0 degrees inclined. So you can use that as a datum for making sure. You can use it as a point of reference to make sure that your orbits are in the right orbit. So if I set the moon as target, That's how I have the ascending and descending node indicators. Basically, the point where we cross the equator, the angle is 0.1 or 1/10 of a degree. We are basically 0 degrees inclined at 0 eccentricity. That's all you got to know. We're at 100 kilometers by 100 kilometers. No eccentricity, no inclination. This is where you want your stuff to be, especially if you're just getting used to docking. This will make it so much easier. So, let's quick save, right? So our capsule's up here. Capsule's good to go. Sid Point and Philo are they're just chilling. Let's go down, back to the Space Center. All right? Now, how do we get to it? How do we get to that capsule? Here's the fun part. Let's go into the VAB. Is the real moon orbit at 6-degree incline? No, Nancy, it's not. No, it's 6 degrees inclined relative to a 27-degree axial tilted Earth. So, if you had Earth's equator and the moon, it'd be 6 degrees inclined. But here's the kicker. Earth's orbit, Earth's tilted. We have a 27-degree axial tilt, so the moon's kind of... The whole moon orbit is tilted, but relative to Earth's equator, it's like 6 degrees. Yeah. Kerbal makes it easy. They make it very easy. All right? It makes it very easy. Kerbin has 0 axial tilt. The moon has 0 axial tilt. And the moon's orbit relative to Kerbin is 0 degrees inclined. That's a good question. No, on Earth, it's way more difficult. Like, way more difficult. This is the physics test I wish grade school gave you. Yeah, Mackie, that's what I do here. I did this with KSP1. Taught everybody how to freaking play. We'll do it again, man. I'll freaking do it again. I don't care if there's a 2 next to the name. Let's go. So, I have another rocket. Same exact rocket. We'll just dock 2 pods together. This is what NASA did during the Gemini program. Figured out how to do Rendezvous by taking 2 capsules. Gemini 6 and Gemini 6A. Or no, Gemini 6 and 7. They got, well, 6A and 7 if you want to be technical. Got them near each other. At least I think it was those missions. So, let's put Furley and Durden in there. All right, now let's go to launch pad 2, recover the launch clamps from the other pad. There we go. Thanks for the answers and explanation. Sure, it was Gemini 6 and 7. Okay, cool. All right, so check this out. Capsule's right over us. We could go into a direct rendezvous, but I don't like doing that. I mean, this would be nice. What I really like to do, believe it or not, is, I mean, actually, we could launch right up and try to circularize as close as we can to the first capsule. That's a good way to do things, but that's not how I like to do things. That isn't what NASA does either. NASA often puts themselves into a lower orbit. And now here's the key, okay? So, 100, that thing's 100 by 100, right? Perfectly circular. 0 degrees inclined, 0 eccentricity. What I like to do is wait, and don't get me wrong, you don't have to do it this way, but I'm trying to keep it, for the more advanced Kerbal players, you can launch right into a rendezvous. That's fine. I'm not saying you can't do that. This is the easy way to do it. This is for the newer players, all right? So I'm going to wait until it gets out in front of me. And now we go. Boosters in ignition. Oh, there we go. Send it. Okay. Roll program complete. Roger, roll. Vehicle's now pitching downrange. The heck is Duna? Duna is the Mars equivalent in this game. I gotta change it though. Teaching Orbital Rendezvous. Yeah, of course, Tip. Man, that thing looks good. I like the first season, Tip. The second and third season kind of got away from me a little bit. That's when it starts getting a little more sci-fi than anything, but hey, whatever. If you like it, you like it, you know? It's a good show. Marvin's just doing his thing. Yeah, Bull, we'll venture back at some point, dude. Okay. Okay, 1 Bravo. Okay. This ascent for Jebstone's looking quite good. Very nice. Thrust tailing off on the SRB, standing by for separation. Good separation. Good upper stage ignition. Ullage motors on time. 2 Alpha. Alright, so same deal as the other one, but what I'm gonna do now is instead of going for 100 by 100, I'm gonna go for a lower orbit. We'll go for 90 by 90, okay? Yeah, it kind of jiggled around there, Kibby. You see that? Okay, stand by for LES jettison. A good design will definitely help you, Waldar. That's a big one. The design of your ship really has a lot to do with how easy it is to dock. I'll get into that more when we get to rendezvousing, okay? Okay, go for launch escape system jettison. 2 Bravo. So I'm throttled here. I'm kind of purposely holding the throttle a little bit so we can get into the right orbit. I'm aiming for about, actually 80 by 80 would probably be easier because that capsule's a good way out in front of us. But once again, I could launch right into a rendezvous. That's easy. But that's hard for newer players. So I'll stick to 80 by 80 and we'll go from there. Any idea when the engine exhaust at high altitude? I don't know what that means. I think some of them have it, Simon, but I don't remember off the top of my head. All right, so we're getting close to the AP. That's the most efficient time. We're going to throttle that engine back up all the way. So what you can do now to make sure that your orbital inclination is right is set the vehicle as target. And now I can see my ascending node relative. We're 0.2 degrees off right now. 0.2 degrees off. I'm just going to wiggle it around a little bit to get our inclination right. There we go. There we go. Now we're basically following the same path here. There you go, Daimar. Learning rocket science. That's what I do. Yeah, so once again, fellas, if you guys got questions, hold off on questions. I'll show you how to do this whole thing, and we'll go from there. I should be able to answer most of them, just with the explanations. Thanks, Weed. Alright, so we're crossing 1900 meters a second. We need to get to about 22, 22.5, 2300 meters a second, somewhere in there. Trying to stay right at 80. We went a little bit high, but that's okay. We're a little above our target, but that's okay. It's not a problem. Alright, P is almost positive. Now I'm going to throttle down the engine. And stand by for second stage engine cutoff. We have SECO confirmed. Nominal orbital insertion. Separate the capsule. Capsule separated. Enable the thrust controls. Thrust control systems on the capsule are good. Stand by for service module ignition. Service module ignition is good. Once again, I dumped that stage in an orbit where it's going to come back down. You don't want to leave stuff up there. That's a bad habit to get into. So now what we'll do is I'm going to try to set my PE, the perigee, or the periapsis, lowest point. I'm going to try to set it right at 80. And then we'll have to do a little bit of a deorbit action. So we're 80 by 87. That's not bad. But we want to try to get into a nice circular orbit because we have to catch up. So stage will do its thing. It'll go back down. So we're over at the PE now. I don't know what that is, but I'm going to get rid of it. Or not. So we're 89 by 80 right now. I don't really want to be there, so let me get my translate thrusters up. I'm setting these thrusters for only forward, back, up, down, left, and right, and then the thrusters on the pod are for pitch, yaw, and roll. That's what I mean about good design. You got to make sure that you do that, get that all figured out. So, and that comes from just sitting in the SPH and messing with it.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
There we go. Sorry, didn't have a roll. All right, so back this up. Mackie Geeves. Welcome to Mission Control. Go at throttle up. Thanks for the prime sub, dude. So I'm just using the RCS, the reaction control system, so my fine control thrusters, the small thrusters. You don't need this. That's course adjustment. We just need very, very rough adjustment. These are for fine control. We're going to need these jets for rendezvous. You got skill if you can rendezvous with just that motor. That's hard to do. All right, so now I'm going to go a little bit further. I'm going to get to the AP. We're 80 by 78. That's okay. It's not bad. Okay, now at AP here, I'm just going to give myself a little bit of a boost. Little boost with the fine control thrusters. So 80 by 80 and 100 by 100. Good. Quick save. Cool. Shut the RCS off so we don't mess with it too much. So now we're in a nice orbit. We're not inclined relative to it. We're 80 by 80. Target's 100 by 100. Okay. The first thing you got to do here is make sure you're in what's called the right phase. All right. So phase angles here. The phase angles, the plain English way of saying that is make sure you're in the right spot to get there on using the least amount of fuel. Just you got to be in the right phase. Easy peasy. There is a very... I could go into the math. We could go into Hohmann transfers, blah, 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 blah. There's a very easy way to do this. I'll show you. It's very, very simple. So Rendezvous basically takes... There's 3 big phases. NASA calls rendezvous between 2 spacecraft. They call it rendezvous, proximity, operations, and docking. Okay, so... First one is the rendezvous burn. Second one is the proximity burn, and the third one is docking. Those are the 3 phases, all right? So the first thing we got to do is do a rendezvous burn. Now, how does that work? Well, this is the quick and easy way of doing it. We're in 100 by... the target's 100 by 100. We're in 80 by 80. You really want to find the good phasing to do that rendezvous burn correctly. All you got to do is just take the distance, all right? So... set that as target. We already have it set. Take the distance between your orbit, and this is the key to making these things nice and circular, okay? Take the orbit that it's in 100, the orbit that we're in. We're 100 by 100 and 80 by 80. Take that distance, times it by 2. So that's a 20 kilometer difference. What's 20 times 2? 40. So we want to go about 40 kilometers back behind the thing. That's your phasing area. That's where you do the burn. I can do it without maneuver nodes, and I'll get you a perfect rendezvous, right? We don't even need it. But I will use a maneuver node just to show. We're pretty much in phase. With the maneuver node, how you do it is just pull on the prograde one, because we gotta speed up to go a little bit higher, right? All right, and you'll get an intercept. See the intercept right there? That's the point of target at intercept, and that's where you are. Right, so that intercept is not very close. So now what we do is we drag this thing around until they're basically on top of each other. Note that I'm basically doing the same burn. I'm just changing where I'm doing it, like relative to Kerbin, right? So cool thing is that if you right click on that and hold it, if you right click on this, it should stay up. Well, it's not, but that's okay. But that pretty much is the right spot. I don't know why it's not. The maneuver nodes are still a little picky-choosy here. Yeah, they're still a little picky-choosy. That's the spot that we want to be in. All right, so... I think I fat-fingered spacebar, guys. I think that's my fault. So we got to do a little bit of a reload. But if you quick save often in Kerbal, there you go. I think I fat-fingered this spacebar, and that's why the maneuver node got finicky on me. It was working, and then I was like, why isn't it working? Why? Okay. But we're basically right back like 15, 20 seconds ago. So we still know where we need to burn. The burn is over here. It's in the dark. It's on the dark side of Kerbin. So we create a maneuver plan here, and then we just zip it up there. Shouldn't be a lot. Huh. Oh, we gotta go around a couple of orbits. That's the part I didn't quick save. Take the distance between the higher orbit and the distance between your orbit, and just times it by 2 and get like 40. So we have a 20 kilometer difference in the orbits here. Go 40 kilometers behind the target and burn. That's the easy way to do it. That will work every time because physics doesn't change. Now, that's the trick. You want to do that right? That's how you rendezvous. That's how you get the rendezvous burn down. But that's only one part of the equation. You can get near it But if you get near it, how the heck are you going to do the proximity operations? That's another story, and I'll get into that in a moment here when we get the right phase. I think we're good to mark the right phase. It was over here. I'll make sure I won't fat finger the damn keyboard this time. Yeah, see? Same spot. Physics doesn't change because we're in the same orbit and everything. Now, what's the intercept there? 11 kilometers. That's no good. We need to go up here. There we go. That's going to get us a really nice intercept. But we could go further with this. We could do better. Yeah, see, that's a good orbit. That matches the orbit, but ideally I want to get my AP lined up with the intercept. If we can get AP lined up with intercept, that's the closest. That's the most efficient. Distance from target 467 meters with a relative speed of 15 meters a second. I'm going to call that one good. So now that you made your maneuver plan for your transfer, go here, turn on the SAS, and select target maneuver. The spacecraft, as long as you're not in time warp, will automatically target where you need to point this thing. Hey Pixel, just flying capsules around. Your hat is crooked and it's bothering me. Sorry. This will be on the test? Yes. Okay. So, now in Kerbal, you got a handy time warp to maneuver thing. And Kerbal 1 has that too, but yeah, it's pretty much in the same spot, which is funny. We'll go around all the way. Your dog ate the test. Get a better dog then, jeez. All right, so now if we look at the required meters a second velocity change here, it's only 15. We can hit that with the engine. That's no problem. The engine should be able to figure it out, but we could also do it with the reaction control systems if we wanted to. So here's what I like to do. You're not going to be super precise with course adjustment, right? So you're not going to be super precise with course adjustment like that. So, there's your burn progress. What I like to do is stop right before the burn finishes. Just stop. Why? X the burn out. You don't need that. And now go look at your intercept. You don't want to burn too far. And now, what I'm going to do is use the RCS, the little jets, for fine adjustment. And if we burn, we left a little bit more, so I have RCS, reaction control thrusters, that are pointed in the same direction as the engine. I'm going to hit those thrusters.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
Right? We're going to turn those suckers on. And look, we're finishing up the burn. 4, 3, 2. See that? There we go. 700 meters away. Easy peasy. That's going to get us 700 meters, within 1 kilometer of the target. Now, I have an intercept node on the way up there. That's a close point right there. And then we have AP, and then we have an intercept. I didn't put my intercept directly on AP. That's fine. It's really okay. 670 meters away is no problem. I might even be able to dial it in even more. Let's just leave it like that. And once again, right now I'm using the RCS to just get close. There you go. So, if you noticed, I did a 15 meter a second burn to boost my AP into a slight eccentricity, right? To get it up to 100 kilometers. 15 meters a second burn. Interesting thing. Look at the relative speed difference between me and the target once we get to a close point. It's the same number. Cuz this is only half of the battle, all right? In order to rendezvous and then do the proximity operation correctly, I'm just getting near the station this time. But if I kept going, we'd just fall away because we are in eccentric orbit and it is in a circular orbit. Our perigee is still low. It's still down at 80. We got to boost it up to 100. The idea is to boost it up to 100 right when you're next to the craft. And that's the proximity operations here. So, we'll save ourselves some time here. Right? Yep. Far, thank you. Save ourselves some time. Yeah, see, we weren't very efficient. I actually went a little bit higher than my target payload, but on the way back down, we'll get a good intercept. You ideally want your AP to be at the exact altitude, but it's okay. This is fine. It's good enough. You don't have to be perfect. All right, this isn't NASA. It's Kerbal. You don't have to be perfect. Drop the quick save, and yeah, see, our relative speed kind of... That's weird that our relative speed changed. It shouldn't have changed, but it's about 15. I think that might be UI or something. So now, check it out. There's the capsule. So here's the proximity stuff. We could find the right direction to point in to match its orbit, or we'll do it this way. This is the Kerbal way of doing it. So over here, you have your velocity indicator on the nav ball, right? We already know that we have that vehicle set as target. So switch this. If you click on it, you'll switch it to surface mode. That's not what we need. That's for landing. And then target mode. If you notice, the target mode is reading 19.8 meters a second. If we go and look at our intercept, it rounded it up to 20 meters a second change. If you set it to target, that will show you exactly where you need to point your spacecraft to basically get into the same orbit as said craft. So let's go find it. Find our retrograde indicator. Turn the RCS on. Find that retrograde indicator, and that will tell you exactly where you need to be. All right? So, what target mode is doing with the nav ball, if you notice, the nav ball flicked around a little bit, right? Some of the icons changed. What that's doing is showing you your velocity relative to your target. Right now, we have a 19 meter a second difference. In order to match the orbit of the target that we're trying to get to, all you got to do is just wait until you're at your closest point of approach, switch this to target mode, find retrograde on the nav ball, wait for it, and boop, fire the module. Or fire the engine. Now, just like with the maneuver nodes, I don't like getting that number close to 0. We can use the RCS to figure out the rest here, all right? Don't do fine adjustment with a rocket engine. Use the jets for it. That's why you put them on there, okay? Now, there we go. Check that out. 0.1 meter a second. We're right next to her. 570 meters out. Well, that's good. We've definitely matched its orbit. But here's the thing. We matched its orbit temporarily. The reason why we matched its orbit temporarily is because technically I'm in a different orbit than that thing. Even though it's only 570 meters next to me, right? That's not that far. It's about 1,600 feet. It's not a long way. But we're technically in two different orbits, and eventually our orbits will fall out of phase. I'll move away from it. We'll start moving away over time. But that's the proximity operations. Target, retrograde, get that as close as you can to 0. And then, now what we're doing is called station keeping. Station keeping is basically flying in formation with something. You will see some station keeping happening in real life if you watch a stream a little bit later tonight when Crew 6 goes up to the space station. If you're watching this in the future, Crew 6 hopefully is docked to the space station, and yeah, disregard that. So, now we're here. That's the proximity stuff. Well, proximity part A. We're not next to it. We're 570 meters away. So, here's what you do. Okay? Now, turn the SAS on and select that key right there. Point at target. Take the RCS, turn it on, and your reaction control system, your jets, will basically point the spacecraft at the target. Now, some keen-eyed viewers will notice that my target indicator is different now because I fired the jets. I put myself into a different orbit, a slightly different orbit. We gave ourselves a slightly different differential orbital velocity. So here's what we're going to do now. Here's the trick. Second part of proximity. Whoop! I'm going to burn with the jets. I wouldn't use the rocket engine here because it's too coarse of an adjustment. I'm going to use my reaction control systems to get my prograde indicator lined up with my target indicator. And now I'm going right towards it. Now, here's the thing. See, if you notice, 500 meters going down, right? But here's the thing. We're still in a different orbit. So if you watch, this number should change. Even if I time warp, it'll change just a little bit. See, 5.5. It'll go up to 5.6 because we're still in a slightly different orbit. See how it fell out of phase there? And see how it changed velocity? That's because we're still in a slightly different orbit. And this is what station keeping is all about. Station keeping is constantly keeping station with whatever you're trying to fly to. So I'm going to take this off of target indicator and I'm going to set it to prograde because we don't want to point at the target. We're going right by. If we pointed at the target and tried to fire, we'd crash. So I'm going to hit the brakes, start to slow down with the RCS. It's omnidirectional, so you don't need to reorient the spacecraft. And look, now my spacecraft is slowing down relative to target. Turn this thing over to stability control, just straight stability. Don't need to set it to prograde so much because the prograde indicator is going to go away when we completed the second part of Rendezvous, which is now. Now we're near the capsule. 30 meters. We were 500. Here's the thing. You're not always going to get into orbit next to it the same way every time. So if you do fall out of phase before you get near it, neutralize velocity relative to target, find that retrograde, set target indicator to 0, point towards target, burn towards target. Rinse and repeat until you're there. Sometimes, if you're like below the thing or above it, it's going to take a little bit. But that is a surefire way to get there, all right? So we're 30 meters out. Now what do we do? Well, that's the part of proximity that we have figured out. We've done the proximity part, so we've completed phase 2. Now we just got to do phase 3, docking. All right, so I'm going to take this spacecraft here, and we'll set this spacecraft to target retrograde here. Now, that's the first spacecraft that we sent up. And it looks like its shroud decided to divide by 0 on me because Kerbal 2, which is fine. What's the top number in the 100 mean? I'm not sure, Rec. Hold questions until later. Yep. Okay, so see, I use the jets to move around, and now we moved around relative.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
So what we can do now, what we got to do now is set the other vehicle as target. See if we can at least. Nah, it won't let us do it, but it's all right. I can fix it. This thing fell out of phase. Bith, 57 months. Thank you. I don't use the docking controls, guys. I never use those. So another thing that pays is to orient your spacecraft in the same way every time, but I'll get to that later. Okay, we got a station keep with our original pod, so there we go. That thing is right where it needs to be. Just set SAS on. Now we got to use this. So I moved a little ways away because yeah, that happens. But we still have this set as target. So, because we fell out of phase, now is a great example, or a great time to show how you refine it if your orbit goes out of phase a little ways. So, we're 0.7 meters a second going away. Our retrograde indicator is set on target. We don't want that. So I'm just going to do a small burn with the jets and start going towards this thing. But if you notice, I'm not taking my target indicator, right? I'm not taking the position that I'm going and setting it to target. Because here, I'm going to set us up for some docking action here, okay? I know. Alright, so. Now we're here. So now let me find my prograde indicator. I don't want to set it right on target because you don't want to crash into it. I always try to aim kind of next to where I'm going. Nice sunset right there. All right, so we're 0.0. We're station keeping again. We're next to it. But we are still technically in a slightly different orbit. We will fall out of phase if we're not careful. So, now, I got to get that docking port lined up with that docking port. Why do you keep moving around? Stop moving around. Anyway. So what I like to do, and this is a big one, make sure you orient your spacecraft in a way that your brain understands. Pitch down, pitch up helps when you're oriented relative to the ground. That way pitch up means point up towards the sky rather than down towards the planet. That really, really, really helps. Everybody's different though. It doesn't really matter. But that's it's a good place to start. All right, so. All right, watch this. Ready? So what I like to do when you dock, right, is target a spot out in front of the port you want to dock to, right here.
Discovery,
or in this case, it's kind of behind because we're going that way. Bye, guy. Nice. Oh, not quite. So what I like to do is put the spacecraft out here. Put it out here, and imagine kind of a parking spot right here. Okay. That's where I always aim for. I aim out in front of the docking port, and then we approach it. Like a runway. Like a plane going to a runway. Remember, your target indicator is showing where you're going. If your prograde indicator is lined up in the center of the nav ball, that means you're flying straight. So. Let's get 10 meters out here. Make sure we cross an imaginary line right here. There we go. And stop. Now we're station keeping again. So what I need to do now is start orienting the spacecraft. So the first thing I'm going to do, obviously, is turn it so the docking port is in a relative right direction. And now, to line this up, you basically got to understand that a spacecraft can move in 6 directions. Okay? You can rotate up, rotate down, rotate left, rotate right, roll left, roll right. So that's 3. Pitch on, roll. And then you can translate up, translate down, translate left, translate right, move forward, move back. That's the other 3. You have 3 translational axis and 3 rotational axis, okay? So we have translate left, right done because we're in front of the spacecraft. We're not over here. We're not over here. We're lined up translate left, right. That's done. Already finished. What I'm doing is I'm figuring out yaw. So basically get the thing pointed at it, or the docking port pointed in the right direction, right? So now we have yaw more or less figured out. Now let's get up and down figured out. Right, go up. The key is you just got to axe all of these. You got to axe every single one. Axe all 6 of them. So we've gotten like 2 out of 6 right now. Now forward and back pretty much is solved because we have our imaginary parking spot. Now, once again, make sure after you do every maneuver here, right, you try to get this number back to 0 as much as you can. 0.1 will work just fine. So now we got all the translation stuff figured out. We're out in front, so now we just got to pitch down a little ways. Right? So there we go. Just killed picked off pitch right there. Easy peasy. And now, just got to get the roll figured out. Now roll is done. We're pretty much lined up on every single axis. All right? Pretty much. It's close. But we got to... We'll just dial it in a little bit more. Okay. So now, once you're pointed in the right direction, you have yaw, pitch, and roll figured out. Translate forward, back, left, right figured out. We're a little bit off with yaw. We can fix that. That's no problem. Right? Now, what's the only one? The last thing left to do is just go forward. So that's what we do. Just go forward. Now, don't get me wrong. You want to make slight adjustments here, and you want to make sure that your velocity is still going towards target. Do this slowly. Do not go fast. If you do it slow, you take your time, you'll dock everything, every time. So now what you got to pay attention to is down here. My target, I'm going to stop for a moment. My spacecraft direction, the direction that my craft is pointed in is not lined up with target, which means I'm not pointed at that docking port anymore. So I'm going to do a slight adjustment, little course correction here. Little something, little course correction here. Or if you really want to get fancy, you could just set your SAS to target. Right? Now I'm going to move forward again. I'm going to move forward again, get that prograde indicator, my spacecraft orientation, and the target indicator to all line up. See, just go left, right. Do some quick things there. There we go. And...
Discovery, go at throttle up.
You did this right. Done. Easy. It's not difficult. You completed the last step. Docked. Now you have your two spacecraft docked together. There you go. That's Rendezvous, proximity operations, and docking. You'll see a real spacecraft do this a little bit later tonight if you watch Crew 6 with me. But that is the easy way to do it. Might want to mention about having balanced RCS on the crafts. Yeah, I already did, Mutter. Yeah. The RCS on these crafts is slightly off balance, but if you take your time, you can even get unbalanced RCS to work correctly. Notorious No Face with the Prime sub. Thank you. See, it's just about being methodical. You got to get that rendezvous burn right. Get the rendezvous burn right. Get close. Once you're close, flip to target, find retrograde, burn, and then just station keep, rinse and repeat until you're close. Once you're close to this thing, you completed rendezvous, find the imaginary parking spot out front, get your craft there, rotate it into position, and then just go forward. That's it. That's how NASA does it. They do the same thing. You'll see Crew 6 dock tonight. They will get out in front of the space station, and they'll stay there for a second, and then they'll move in to dock, like an approach on a runway. That's how you got to do this. But that's how she works.